Simi Sara is a Canadian radio and television broadcaster, currently a talk radio host on the Simi Sara Show on CKNW Radio. Prior to that, she spent 10 years in local television hosting CityTV's breakfast television, again, as many of us will know. Simi's willingness to come out and support the school, the speed at which she responded to our invitation and agreed to come out gives us such satisfaction in knowing the care that people have as they conduct their lives and carry on their future. The school remains with them. And we're tremendously honored to welcome Simi Sara to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry that Dr. Joy Johnson isn't here because she's been so great to me, and she made it sound like the time that she was with me on the radio was some kind of love fest, and I will tell you it was not. I was actually interviewing her about the termination of the football program. Yeah, I know, right? And she was so generous with her words up here, and I was sitting there going, did we do the same interview that I'm remembering here? Because I remain a big supporter of athletics, and I was not happy with the SFU decision. And I certainly let her know that when she was on my show, only employing the skills that I was taught at the School of Communication, of course. And she was very generous with her words to me. So I appreciate that. And being in radio as well, this is my 30th year actually in the kind of media and broadcasting industry here in Vancouver. And in radio, which is the end, I've been in newspapers, I have been in television. Radio to me remains the single greatest medium of communication. The one medium that was around when this started 50 years ago and remains just as relevant today as it was 50 years ago. So I do love that. And I want to thank you so much for the honor of being able to speak here tonight, really about an institution and a school that has meant so much to me personally. So way back in 1989, if I could indulge you for a moment here, I was in grade 12 and I was deciding where I wanted to go for university. Now, my whole life had been the expectation that I would go to UBC. And the reason is I was a first generation Canadian from an immigrant family to this country. A very high premium was placed on education, as I'm sure so many of you can understand. It was the reason my grandparents chose to come to Canada when they had their choice of a number of different places that they could have gone. They had 7 daughters and they had 4 sons. And they wanted to make sure that their 7 daughters had just as many opportunities as the boys did in their family. And so we all understood that that meant education, and we had to work to make those opportunities happen. So by the time that I was ready to go to university in 1989, I would have been, theoretically, the 3rd generation to go to UBC. I had a great uncle who was among the first people of color to graduate from that particular institution. I had several aunts and uncles who had graduated, including my mother, who never ceased to remind me of that. So expectations were really, really high that I was going to go to UBC, except I chose otherwise. And one of the reasons is this. And when I was in grade 9, I was in love with all things Hollywood and movies and television and mediums. And I decided that I did want to be a film director. And so I wrote to several universities to ask about film as an area of study. Only one wrote me back, and that was Simon Fraser University. And I kept that letter, and the school in turn kept my loyalty when the time came 3 years later for me to choose somewhere to go. I never did end up, of course, studying film, but I did remain connected to the school. And so when I had to tell my mother that I had chosen to come to Simon Fraser University, she was devastated, to be honest. And she said to me, but that's the hippie university. Now, as some of you will know, we're talking about a time when she was at UBC, SFU was just starting in 1965. And yeah, that was, in a good way, the hippie university, because it meant that it was the alternative. It was the alternative to the establishment and the elite and all those places that felt out of reach for so many people there. It was the unique place. And for me, and for so many of us, I think, in this room, it ended up being the better place, the better choice for all of us, right? Now, I didn't, unfortunately, finish my degree after starting it. I lost my mother in a car accident at the end of my first year at Simon Fraser University, and it completely changed my trajectory. It sent me to journalism school. It sent me onwards. But many years later, with 2 teenagers who were considering where to go for university themselves, I thought, you know what, I should probably finish what I had started. And so at the age of 42, I approached Simon Fraser University about coming back. And this to me is why it is such a great school and why the School of Communication will always have a very special place in my heart. They valued my life experience. They understood my path and the trajectory that I had been on. They helped me find that way back to post-secondary and back to my Bachelor of Arts degree, which I finished here at the School of Communication in 2017. So a lot of years after I started. Thank you. And you know, a lot of people ask me, like, why are you bothering? Like at that point, I had already done so many things. I had been on television, I was on radio, and I had accomplished a lot. So people would say, why are you bothering to finish this thing? And you know what? I had a career that has given me the freedom to pursue inquiry and ask questions of people at the highest levels, presidents of universities and all sorts of things. The best thing about my job is that it allows me a lot of opportunities to learn and to continue learning. I learn from experts all over the world. I learn from masters in their field, and I get to ask them all sorts of questions. But it is the tools that I learned at the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University that has allowed me to take all of that information that I have learned and was learning and put it into context. Not just for me, but for the thousands of listeners who do tune in every morning to listen. And thank you for that, Stuart. I appreciate it. And I am so grateful for that. So journalism taught me how to question things, but the School of Communication taught me years later how to put those answers in perspective and give them proper historical and current context. Because asking questions without all that context is just, listening to myself talk. It's just a lot of hot air. So the School of Communication taught me to dig deeper. It taught me to see the bigger picture out there. It taught me to search for the patterns and then explain them in a way that people could understand so they could see those same connections, and then I could help them do that. So I am now very proud to say that after I went to SFU and finished, I've had 3 or 4 cousins follow me, one who even completed her PhD here. I haven't quite broken that UBC hold though, because my daughter spurned me and went there and graduated from there, but that's okay. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. So thank you to the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University. Thank you for helping me and for so many others in the room here learn about the bigger world, and for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it, and congratulations.